Hi everyone, I'm Jackie and you all know Jason, and today I'll be asking him 5 questions on how the Packers stand right now. So everyone thinks, or seems to think, that Aaron Rodgers' concussion came from a helmet to helmet. Should the NFL do anything about this?
Well, Jackie, Aaron Rodgers has struggled to get that call on a number of occasions since he's come into the league. This was just the latest example of that. I don't want to sound like a homer here, but I do think that he has been unfairly not protected by the officials. We saw it happen in the NFC wildcard playoff game when he took the helmet-to-helmet hit the play before the fumble for the touchdown in overtime. Bertrand Berry was fined $7,500 for that, even though he wasn't flagged. I think this is another instance of that. I think we will see Jeremy Jarman fined at the end of the week by the league, and it should have been a penalty, should have wiped out the interception. The Packers should have still had the ball. I think the interesting thing would have been, would Aaron Rodgers have been able to continue? Because we were obviously told that he'd had a concussion after that play. Had the Packers gotten the ball back, it would have been Matt Flynn at quarterback. So that would have been interesting to see. I'm guessing Aaron Rodgers would have continued that series.
All right, brought up a good point. And then, should the Packers hold?
I brought up a good point. I appreciate that.
Well, good job.
I'm glad Jackie thinks so.
It's about time. Okay, and then should the Packers hold open a roster spot for Nick Barnett?
Well, they've got a couple of decisions in that department. You're really starting to become like some sort of expert around here. I'm impressed. Look at the improvement from Jackie. Smart aleck. They've got some decisions to make here, not only with Nick Barnett, who's out 6-8 weeks with the wrist surgery that he had on Wednesday morning, but obviously Jermichael Finley with the knee surgery that he had on Tuesday, revealing that it was going to be longer than expected there. Instead of 3 to 6 weeks, now we're looking at 8 to 10 weeks, and that's a long time to hold the roster spot open, especially when you have as many injuries as this team has. My argument on this would be, though, that Jermichael Finley is an awfully important part of this offense, and if you can survive without him and then get him back late in the season or for a playoff run, that would certainly help your football team a lot. I would say if I were to predict, I think both those guys are going to end up on injured reserve, though, and the team's not going to wait for them.
All right, and then there was a lot going on in Sunday's loss against the Redskins. What do you think contributed more to it? The 4 injuries, poor play, or is it a mixture of both?
Well, I think it was certainly a mixture of all those things. If you look at the injuries, though, think about who these injuries were suffered by. Aaron Rodgers, which obviously was late in the game, but still a very significant player on this team. Ryan Pickett, who we haven't even talked about yet, who suffers the ankle injury on the second defensive snap. He's obviously very important to their defense, even though Mike Neal seemed to play pretty well in his place. Clay Matthews, who is only their best defensive player right now and had 1.5 sacks, plus had another sack wiped out by a penalty, and what might have been construed by a lot of fans as another sack on the snap that went over Donovan McNabb's head. Those were all wiped out. So this is a guy who was clearly a difference maker. If you broke down the statistics from when he was playing, when he wasn't, all the Redskins' success came after he came out of the game. And then obviously Finley, who gets hurt on the second play of the game on the fumble that Donald Lee had. And on top of that, Donald Lee gets hurt too. So they're down to Andrew Corliss and Tom Crabtree. So I think they certainly had the opportunity to win the game in spite of the injuries, but those are some pretty big names on that list.
And what's going on with Greg Jennings? I mean, is the defense shutting down? Aaron Rodgers just not finding him? Or what's going on? We don't see a lot of him.
Well, Jackie, you were there when he talked today about all the different things that he is frustrated by. He's been targeted for a number of passes, 31, I think, unofficially through the first 5 games, but he's only got 14 receptions, 2 catches in each of the last 3 games. He has not been the productive player that we're accustomed to him being, and he admitted that he became very frustrated during the game. In fact, on the sideline, he says he had some sort of an incident, but he was basically blowing off steam and emotional toward himself, not toward, say, a coach or toward Aaron Rodgers. But clearly this is a guy that they need to be productive, and when you look at the fact that Jermichael Finley, whether he's put on injured reserve or not, is going to be out for quite a while, now the window of opportunity is there for Greg Jennings to get the ball more, but it also hurts in that, obviously, Jermichael Finley took a lot of attention off of Greg Jennings, and we'll see how he deals with that. They have to get him the football, though he is one of their biggest playmakers.
And finally, how do you think the Packers will match up against the Miami Dolphins on Sunday?
Well, the Dolphins are coming off of a bye week, which is good timing for them, not such good timing for the Packers with all their injuries. The Packers could use a bye right about now. Obviously the Dolphins had a very disappointing loss going into the bye with their loss to New England. John Bonamigo, a friend of mine, the special teams coordinator, former now special teams coordinator for the Dolphins, lost his job. I think that this is a really good football team coming out of a really good division, obviously, in the AFC East. I don't know enough about the Dolphins yet to have done enough study to know, but I think that this is a tough matchup, and coming into a game like this against a good physical team, because that's one thing the Dolphins are for sure, is physical. When you're already banged up like this, not a good combination. The good news is at least the game's at home, but I'm not sure that that's going to make a difference.
Okay, great. See you next week.